A lot of conversations that we have about growth focus on what to do to get there. More leads, visibility, better systems. But there's another side of growth that doesn't really get talked about as much. What happens when the business starts working and your role inside that business has to change? Jessica Rhodes is the founder of Interview Connections, and she has built the first podcast booking agency in the world and has helped generate tens of thousands of interviews for hundreds of clients. And at one point, she brought in a CEO and stepped out of that role. And then later, she stepped back in. So, Jessica, thank you for coming today. Welcome back.
Thanks, Paul. I'm excited to come back and share a different part of my business story.
Yeah. And Jessica is an expert at podcast guesting and getting guests on. I use Interview Connections to get guests. They send a lot of guests my way, which is fantastic. And so, but we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the leadership side and the operator side of things, that what happens when you need to bring someone on and because it just, for some reason that you need to step away. Maybe you're the operator, maybe you're more hands-on, maybe. So let's talk about that. What was
Yeah.
happening in the business when you first decided to bring on Margie as the CEO?
Yeah. So I'll give just a short snippet of
Hmm.
context of the starting of the business, 30-second version. So I started the business in 2013 and was the sole owner, operator, chief cook and bottle washer.
Hmm.
And over the years, hired several virtual assistants and 1099 team members to help me deliver the service. And in 2017, I transitioned to having local full-time employees because I
Mm.
wanted to have more quality control. 1099 contractors are great when you have a task, and there are 1099 contractors who can do that task. And it's just a very simple relationship. They invoice you every month, they do the work, and you don't have to oversee everything and how they're doing it. They just do it, and it's great. But as I was growing the business, I wanted to be able to control more of the client experience. I wanted to control more of
Hmm.
how things were done. I wanted them to call clients every week and do things. You're not supposed to tell a contractor how to do their job, right? And so once I
Hmm.
realized that shifted, I'm like, okay, I want to start having employees. But before that, I wanted to have somebody to just oversee the contractors. And so my first full-time hire was Margie. And so she came
Mm.
on as to oversee all of my team. And within 2 months, 3 months, I don't know, within a couple of months of her being on board as the one employee I thought that I needed, I said, oh my gosh, we need to have everyone be an employee. And
Yeah.
she's okay. So the year 2017 was the year when I flipped the model, when Margie and I worked together, her as my employee, me as the owner, to exit all of our contractors and onboard all local employees. And it was in that year that I realized I could not have done that without her. And she brought a
Mm.
different skill set, a different way of working that was really great. So going into 2018, it was like around her annual review, that's when I decided to make her a co-owner. And I gave her 50% equity in the company. We've done whole podcast
Mm.
episodes about that. And
Yeah.
I made her co-owner, and through the first year or so, we were truly co-owners. That's what we called ourselves. I don't think at that point we were like, I'm CEO, you're COO. We just were co-leading. And one of the things that she brought was a fresh vision. I had grown the business to maybe 300,000 a year in revenue. So it was like a solid six-figure business. And that was my vision from starting the business. I wanted to have employees. I wanted to have an office. I wanted to have a six-figure business. And once I checked those three boxes off, I was like, I was depressed. I was, what
Mm.
do I do now? I don't, what do we do? And as a co-owner, she came in and was like, let's take it to seven figures. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, sure. Okay. Hitched my ride to her vision. And we made all these moves. We joined a mastermind group for seven-figure female entrepreneurs because it was logical that if you want to be a seven-figure entrepreneur, you join a group, a mastermind group with other people at that level, learn a lot from being in those spaces. So we made some big moves. And so that's the year 2018. And 2019, I remember the call. We were on a coaching call. We had hired this really high level sales coach, and he was coaching us. And we were learning from him that the role of a CEO is to bring vision. They are driving the business forward. They cast the vision of this is where we're going. And it was in that conversation that it was a little uncomfortable at first, but I was like,
Mhm.
oh, like, you're actually the CEO. She
Mhm.
was the CEO before we formalized it and gave her that title, but it was in that coaching conversation with that coach that I realized, and I don't I think I had to be the one to be like, "Yeah, that's your title." Because
Mhm.
first I was the founder CEO, and then, like, equal co-owners, and so it was in about 2019 that we just formalized that and was like, "You're the CEO." And I just kept the title founder. I didn't become COO, or I guess technically I'm, like, president, but I really just
Yeah.
stepped into sales, marketing, whatever needs to get done. And then she really was in that driver's seat of the visionary, of the person that would drive forward the big strategic moves we had to make to get to the next level.
What you just said there was more than 30 seconds, by the way.
Oh, I know.
But
Sorry. I really went
but
off on us.
but that's no, that's great though. No, it gave me a lot, so I don't have a lot of follow-up questions. But one thing that I think is important when you got to that point, you were feeling you didn't mention it, but there was a pressure there. And the pressure that you were feeling was, hey, this is a relationship business. I need to make sure that I have a culture that's gonna cultivate that, and I want to have something more out of my organization than 1099 workers are going to give me. And in order to do that, you have to instill your values, your culture, how you want things done, how you want clients treated, how you want your vendors treated, and how you want to also treat your people. And so if you don't take that on somewhat early on, as you grow, that vision and those morals will be distilled, and as you grow, you'll outgrow them. And that Jessica Rhodes founder who was fuzzy and warm with all of her clients, that disappears.
Yeah. And the other thing that Margie brought, which I think is a really important skill set to have as a CEO, is the ability to look at the business from a bird's eye view. Look at the
Mhm.
whole entity, look at it from the big picture, because the CEO's role is to drive the business forward, is to cast that
Yeah.
vision and then put the right people in the right seats to bring that vision to life. And for so
Mhm.
long, I was much more comfortable I was much more comfortable doing the tasks, doing the sales calls, like working with the clients. It really takes a lot of trust and confidence, and I don't know what other words there are to it, but you have to have a level of comfort to step back, because it's so easy to see in the business that needs to get done and just I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it myself.
Right.
But the CEO has to have a high enough perspective to be able to see the whole chessboard and to be able to see all the different
Yeah.
pieces. Because if you're always down in one corner of the board, how can you possibly look forward to see what are the obstacles that we might be missing? I'm thinking of Titanic, and you got to be able to always look at where the iceberg ahead. They weren't looking,
Right.
and the
They
ship
weren't looking.
crashed, right? And so the CEO always has to be able to look ahead and to always be looking and scanning and looking for obstacles. And so and I needed her for that, because I didn't have at the time the skill set or the capacity to be the person to do that. I was just too in it. It was too much like a part of my identity.
And a lot of times that's where founders start. They're really good at something. And so they say, hey, I'm going to do this on my own. And I go out and do that. And then at some point, there's burnout. And like you said, I can't do this anymore. I need help.
Mhm.
And then fortunately, you had the right hire,
Mhm.
which is a smart thing. There's a book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber that talks about the operator. Basically, maybe you'd be working for someone else. I know you were working for someone else doing canvassing for
Mhm.
fundraising and things like that. And you were doing that and you did that really well. And you said, hey, I can make it rain. Just like
Mhm.
your dad can make it rain. He's a rainmaker.
Yes.
Jim Palmer, Captain Jim Palmer, he's a rainmaker. But where was I going with that? So yeah, so getting out of your way is really hard when you're a hardcore operator. And
Yeah.
so, and it's amazing that you've come this far and you're still able, you've stepped back into the role. But what did you
Mhm.
believe that would happen when you stepped out of the CEO role and let someone else take over? Was there some growing pains there?
I believed that the business would keep growing with me stepping out of it. The business would have stalled if I never stepped out of it, if I never brought in a new vision. I would still be a six-figure business had I not brought in another CEO. And it's
Mhm.
totally normal. It was about 7 years in. I think it was about 7 years after I started the company that Margie became co-owner and CEO. And that is, I think, roughly the amount of time that a lot of big companies will bring in a new CEO because you need that fresh vision. You need fresh vision, and the CEO has to be a really good delegator. And there's
Mhm.
so many founders, they just are. I was just talking to my business coach about this morning, and he was like, do you have a lot of agencies that use your services? And I said, sometimes, usually they're eight-figure agencies because so many agency owners, honestly, seven figures, six and seven figure agency owners are so stuck in service delivery. They cannot get out of servicing the client. And so they never get to
Mhm.
the point where they are truly the CEO, where they're driving the business forward, where they're doing brand building and marketing. And you can call yourself a CEO, but if you're still in client service delivery work, you are not a CEO. You're
You
an
you're
owner
you're not
operator.
pl you're right, you're not playing that role for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Change when you stepped out of that role and I asked you about growing pains, but it seems like
Mm.
you were already really comfortable, but what happened then? Tell us about that, how that changed for you.
Yeah, there were definitely growing pains. The timing was really interesting because right when Margie became CEO, when we formalized the title, that was 2019. And then COVID hit a very
Mhm.
short 6 months later. And we had the biggest years of our lives.
Really?
Sales skyrocketed because it was 2020. Nobody could do any marketing in person. We didn't have
Mhm.
that many competitors. So everyone flocked to podcasts. And so
Mhm.
we really capitalized on the business was great and we were growing. So it wasn't just luck that the pandemic forced everyone to market online,
Right.
but it was the timing, it was both a good service and the right timing. And so we really capitalized on that. And there was so much growth and so many new clients coming in, and the sales were climbing and going so much higher sales every month. But then it was like I was on this rat race of, oh my gosh, we need to get more. We had higher revenue levels and we got to also work harder and harder. And we're so close to those higher level months. And we were going for 500K months for every month. And it was like, I can feel as I'm retelling the story, I can feel it in my body. Like a hindsight, I look back and I'm like, those were incredible revenue months. And I felt so stressed. I was so stressed because it constantly, even though we were hitting these big numbers, that made even bigger numbers that much more appealing. And we just
Mm.
wanted to keep getting higher revenue, higher numbers. And we were in mastermind groups with people that were doing those seven-figure launches. And we're like, and there was just this hustle culture. And it burned me out. It burned me
Mhm.
out. I was like, we were doing these launches every month, operating them and running the launches in a way that just wiped me out. It was like 10 days every 6 weeks. I was working crazy long hours. My whole weekend was blocked off for sales calls. And it was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't have the launch. I can't have the business be this launch dependent. And I just
Mm.
couldn't see a way out of that. And so I was like, I think we just need to stop launching and go back to in-person events. And I just said that, and Margie was like, "Okay." I don't think she totally agreed, but I was the one that was like doing a lot of the sales calls and whatnot. So I was like, I just want to take a leap of faith and I want to do this. We have had just some of the best years of our life revenue wise. Let's just make a pivot. And that caused some of the hardest years of our life because not launching dried up our lead gen. We had we went from thousands of leads coming in to almost none. And we were able to coast for probably 6 months on all of our payment plans. And then things got really tight. And so we brought back the launch. And when we brought it back, I had to really be like, okay, we had to be like, how do we run this in a way that's not going to burn me out again in 6 months? And so we changed a bunch of things. We brought in virtual assistants to help with some of the admin stuff. But that whole year tested me. It tested our relationship. We had some very challenging relationships because I made a decision that ultimately really hurt us. And so we had to navigate through feelings of anger and resentment and frustration, and also just
Hmm.
the crushing pressure of cash flow tightening up and debt climbing. So that was, for context, that was like 2022. And then 2023 was really a recovery year of continuing to build up the leads, build up the sales, and I'll pause there.
Yeah. So what did that, so you got burned out. You got burned out
Hmm.
because you were doing so well, which can
Yeah,
happen. Uh,
exactly.
and, and what systems did you have that were lacking, or was it just because you had to deliver everything that was the cause of the burnout? Did you not have a system to help you with that, or was it just it had to be you?
It was a lot on my shoulders. So it was a lot on my shoulders. Also, we didn't have, just zooming in on the launch, which was like the big rock, the big thing that burned me out was
Mm.
the way we were operating the launch wasn't super organized. One of the things that we changed when we brought the launch back in 2022 was going through and qualifying each of the leads that register, because we would be sending, and we still
Yeah,
do send direct messages to everyone who registers to individually nurture them and make sure they're at the sessions. And prior to that, when I think 2021 and early 2022, we weren't really qualifying leads. So we were DMing thousands of people. And to DM thousands of people one by one, it requires a lot of hours. It requires so much time. And so that was something that we brought back into it. And then we also hired virtual assistants because we're like looking at it. Okay, what are the tasks that me as a 50% owner and founder are doing that we could hire a Filipino VA for $10 an hour to do just as
mhm,
well, and also save me the time to really focus my energy on sales calls, which I have found that it's much better for me to do those calls than to delegate those to somebody who doesn't know how to sell as well as I do.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was the right move, was is to systematize that part of the process could be handed off. And so many times small business operators, they don't have that systemized, the processes defined so that they can
Hmm.
go train someone and get, even if they get maybe close to your ability, 80 or
Hmm.
90% of your ability, they're still taking all that time off your plate. But
Exactly.
having the process documented so that you can hand it off is one of the keys to growing something like that, right?
Yeah. And we also, in addition to some of those systems, really looked at the launch, looked at the sessions, looked at how many people were viewing each of the sessions, showing up live, where does the pitch come in? And so we reworked the sessions. We were doing a 9-day launch and we shortened it down to 3 days, and now we do four.
Three
So
days.
really looking at, okay, does it have to be 9 days? Does it have to be 7 days? Do I have to do sessions on the weekend? Or can we actually get the same results from doing 3 to 5 days, Monday through Friday? So really looking at every aspect of the launch and seeing where are the results coming from. Yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, taking a look at the analytics of what you're doing, knowing your numbers when
Yes.
you're doing something like that. 'Cause before, you just knew the numbers were growing,
Yeah.
and that's great. Said, man, my numbers are growing. I don't really know what's causing that number to grow. I know that it's the launch, but knowing what is actually moving the needle is one of those things that, hey, at first, any sale will do when you're first starting out. But once you start to get to this level, you've got to know those numbers and be able to optimize them so that you can, without adding more overhead, you can scale them and say, okay, these guys aren't ready yet. I'm going to put them on the back burner. These leads here, these are the ones who I'm going to focus on. And there's probably 20% of them that are really the ones that are going to move the needle. And the other 80%, those can be nurtured over time. And they're going to listen in, they're going to come into another launch, they're going to be around. You don't have to worry about that. But getting that fine tuned is what you need to do. And so that's what
Exactly.
happened, right?
Yeah, really looking at everything closely, getting really strategic and intentional about everything because yeah, when
Hmm.
money's flowing and your revenue is just doubling every single year and growing and you're crushing it and you got great profits, you don't really have a reason to zoom in and look at everything. You're like, everything's great. But then when money gets really tight, that's when you look at every single expense, every single like you look at everything, then you grow from a much stronger place.
So when you had that, I agree. When you had that, your father calls it a revenue-free year, but I know what yours
Wasn't
wasn't
revenue free,
revenue-free.
but it was revenue stressful.
So, but how did that feel, and how did that affect not only, I know it affects you and your relationship with Margie, but what about your family and your internal? How did it
Yeah.
affect you personally?
It was very hard. It was a very stressful, dysregulated year. And in hindsight, I look back and my relation, Margie and I are such close friends now, and I know we'll continue going through the story. It really tested us, but it ultimately did make us stronger. I think both of us would agree. We'd never want to redo it, but it got us to where we are now, which is a really great place. And it was really challenging personally. I have a great husband and great kids, but they knew that when mom was in a launch, she might be physically here, but she wasn't here. And I just hated that. I'd have to be like, guys,
Hmm.
I'm in a launch, don't bother me. It was tough. And now they don't even know when I'm launching. They can't tell a difference. Like I'm still here. I'm still fully present. It
Wow.
doesn't matter if I'm launching or not. Like they cannot tell. And it did affect my health. I really do believe that stress is such a it's a toxin in your body.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's coincidental that because that was like 2022, 2023. Right after that, I had to get multiple breast biopsies. I had a big scare there for a while. There were several months where I was going in for mammograms, ultrasounds, breast MRIs. I had to get a surgical biopsy and I was 36 at the time. I hadn't even needed to get mammograms yet, but the stress was literally causing pain in my body and it was really hard. It was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad.
And I don't usually ask this, but I know that you are a spiritual, you have faith. And so how did that strengthen? Did that make you question your faith, or did you turn to your faith to help you get through
Yeah.
that?
I remember talking to my dad. I remember the moment. I think it was in October, maybe 2024. And I was like, Dad, the only thing I can do right now is pray. It was,
Hmm.
yeah, like it
Yeah.
definitely drew me back to my faith, which was really, my relationship with God was on ice for a good while. And my dad would gently say, it's important to don't just pray when things are bad and you need a favor from God, but you got to keep that relationship. And when things are really great, you're like, I don't need God. And then when things are really bad, you're like, oh, please, God, please. But there were there were so many moments of just surrender, of just, I don't know how I can keep doing this. This is so hard. I'm so scared. I'm so stressed. And just praying to God and it's been a journey but yeah I definitely got me to my knees of just like I can't I really get it now of when entrepreneurs say you can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. You can't do it alone. You need that relationship with God, with a higher power, because it's really hard sometimes.
Yeah, and especially when you have these great moments, that's when you are grateful. And that's really, I think, when gratitude, when there's lots of woo woo going around, but it is a really powerful thing, especially when you're down. It's like
Yeah.
when you're down, you should say thank you for this trial. You got to thank, and St. Paul says, thank God and be thankful in all things. It's really hard to do when you're a lonely entrepreneur and you're burned out and you're there, you're at your low point.
Yeah.
It's really hard to be thankful for that, but
Hmm.
but really it does work, and not just for the sake of making it work, for the sake of being grateful that you're in this position because you've been blessed. For when you first launched Interview Connections, that's when I first met you. I think I don't need your first client was your dad.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's about where I met you when you were just getting started. And from there, you've just look at what's happened in the past. So everything has been a blessing. You've got a husband, you've got the kids, you've got all these things.
And I do agree with what you're saying. You have to be grateful. And that's why I do have the hindsight now. I couldn't have in 2022 when things were really hard in 2023. I just wanted to get out of it. Oh my gosh. I just wanted I wanted some overnight fix. I wanted it to just go away. I wanted to go back in time and make
Mhm.
different decisions. I just had so much regret. And
Mm.
now it's been long enough where I can say, thank you. Thank you for those experiences because had I not gone through those challenges, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be as strong as I am today. My life is so great right now. I'm so happy. I would not be here right now had I not gone through it. And so
Yeah.
you have to, and that's where faith comes in because when you do go through a really hard time and get out of it, and you see that, okay, God had a plan, He had a plan. I have to trust the plan.
Yeah.
I can't see ahead of this really dark moment, but I do trust that this is a part of a much bigger plan.
Yeah. And if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, is what they say.
Exactly, exactly. It's so true.
So you've gotten out of this. You brought Margie on. You've done
Mhm,
the launches. You burned out. You came back and said, "Oh gosh, I better do these launches now, or else."
mhm.
Um, and then things are sailing along now. Uh, And then again, you've what happened
Yeah.
where you needed to step back in as CEO,
Yeah.
and and, and I'm
So
going to ask you follow ups on that, but yeah,
yeah. I'll just tell elements of this because whenever I tell this story, I don't want to say too much about Margie's experience because that's her own experience. But,
right,
Margie was getting very passionate about nervous system regulation and consciousness work. And really, she had started a TikTok account in 2022 and was doing a lot of content about that and just really had her own personal brand on the side where she was blogging and whatnot and getting involved with that type of work. And she just did a post about this recently. I'll say what's been public, but she wanted to for a long time wanted to leave Interview Connections. She wanted to exit Interview Connections and go and really focus on what her purpose in life is and what her passion is, which is nervous system regulation and helping people really achieve that level of consciousness. And so while she loves business and becoming co-owner of Interview Connections really lit up this passion for business, really
mhm,
the topic that she really wanted to focus on was nervous system regulation. Over the years, she's doing TikToks about it and getting involved with a company called Brain-Based Wellness, like in a consulting role. And then she took on part ownership with Brain-Based Wellness a couple of years before she left Interview Connections. And it was just a six-figure business. It didn't take her much time. So she was still able to fully focus on Interview Connections. But there were times where she talked about maybe her leaving, maybe me buying her out. And I was like, nope. Like I was like, no, you can't leave me here. I was still
uh-huh,
recovering from those dark moments. I was like, no, you can't leave me.
yeah,
Um, and we were still, even though we were really recovering, I think reasonably well from the difficulties of 2022, it was still a plateau. We were recovered and it was fine. We're doing okay, but it just didn't feel like we were making forward motion. And we were having some conversations in 2025, like October, and she asked this question that was like, what about this business feels stuck? What about this business feels like we can't change it?
hmm,
And what if we realized and remembered that we can literally change anything because we own the business? And it was that question that opened up this whole other can of worms that then led to her leaving Interview Connections and to all the changes I've made with the service. And so part of it was like, oh, we have these long-term contracts. Wait, maybe we don't have to have packages. Maybe we can do month to month again. And having two owners. And that was when she basically was like, this is what it would look like if I left. And I was like, yeah, that feels right. And sometimes, and we've talked about this so many times, Margie and I, but you can have a great idea, but if it's not the right time, the person who you need to accept the idea will just reject it. And sometimes you need to bring an idea to somebody many times because it needs
Yeah.
to be the right time. And so even though she had brought the idea of her leaving many times before, it was never the right time. And then come October 2025, when she brought it, it was the right time. And I said, yeah, I think that's right. And then so we went through all the process with the lawyers and the accountants and all the things to dissolve a partnership. And as well, having the conversations, like the emotional level conversations of what does this mean
Hmm.
for our relationship and all of that. But it was just the right time. And it was the right time for how I've talked about it before is that when two people have the same vision, when they come together, oh, they go so much faster. They go so much further because now you have two energies going in the same place. When
Hmm.
those two people now have different visions, like if you're watching the video, I'm like pointing in slightly two different directions. And
Yeah.
it's almost like we can't quite go forward because we're both trying to go to separate places. And it's like driving with the emergency brake on. You'll move forward, but you're going to really, your car is going to be in really bad shape because you're driving with the emergency brake on.
A lot of tension. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So she left. And then, so
Hmm.
what's changed now? So you've obviously learned a lot. And
Yeah.
I can tell just from talking to you and having known you, tuned in with to some of your story on LinkedIn that you were telling, but you seem so much more relaxed, so much more calm,
Yeah.
and you are confident. You know where you're going. So what changed? Because you were afraid to make that step. It
Yeah.
sounds you really didn't want to do that for a while.
Yeah. I just think it's going back to the faith conversation. I don't I still don't know if I have a grasp on what did change. I think I just wasn't ready and then I was. And I think it's just was like
Yeah,
I needed to go at I think there was it just I wasn't ready and then God was like, "Now you're ready." And I was like, "Okay, now I'm ready." I don't know how to explain that there was just a moment of knowing. And Margie and I are also going through a course in miracles and so
hmm,
she's like a little bit ahead of me, but that's also a great book to I would recommend it to anyone who's lost faith in God and because it really did help me come back to my faith in a much different way, but a way that just has me surrender and just know that yeah, sometimes you don't always know the plan, but when you really focus on what's most important in life, which is your relationships, your relationship with
hmm,
God, your relationship with your family, your relationship with yourself. Like when you just keep what's most important at the center of your life, then all the business decisions, they lose the threat. I think the visual
yeah,
I'm thinking of is if it's like a kid and they think there's a monster on their bed and that monster gets so much bigger in their head because they're not looking at it. And then once you lift up the bed skirt and you see there's no monster under the bed, you're like, oh, I'm fine. And I think there needed to be some time for the fear of not doing this with Margie to go away. And once I was able to just look at it and say, oh, I'm going to be okay. I can do this. And
hmm,
this is what I want to do. And there's also like an energetic impact when you have a business partner that does want to leave and wants to do something else. It has you question, wait a second, I've only done this with her for 8 years. If she doesn't want to do this, do I want to do this? And it's interesting because I have a twin sister. So
yeah,
I've always had an other. I've always had another half of me.
yeah,
So it was weird to attract a 50% business partner who's like almost my same age and also a blonde. I've like just brought in another twin in my life. And yeah, it wasn't easy because I've always had another half. I've always had another partner. And so when that person left, it's like I needed to be able to realize and know that I can do this on my own.
yeah, for sure. And I think Margie did you a really big favor because what she did is she revealed that monster that was sleeping under your bed
Yes.
by showing you how this would look like running it by yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that was the key that and what you said when you were using a beautiful metaphor, the monster under your bed that you invent this thing. We ruminate about the things that won't really happen. And like you said about having trust,
Yeah.
you say, hey, I can do this. with God's help. And
Exactly.
and the thing that you're doing a great service to people who want to get visibility. And I would like to have maybe another time we talk about visibility going wrong. There's a lot of people, there's the guesting experience, but then what happens after, and
Mhm.
which we won't have time to dig into that. But I'd like to set up maybe another one to go and talk about that, because that is a big leak. I think that people are leaving a lot of money on the table. They go on a show and they aren't prepared. And I know you help prepare them, but they still have to execute, and
Yeah.
they still have to step in. But so at this stage now, so what's next for you,
Yeah.
and what can people who are listening today take away from this conversation that you would recommend that they would do?
What's next for me? We're recording this is May 1st, right? So it's been about
Yeah.
5 months of this
Mhm.
new era for myself of being 100% owner, CEO, and driving the business forward and trusting myself. And I also have a great business coach who's helping to guide me and just continuing to contemplate and ask that question of what do I want? Because when you have a
Mhm.
business partner, it's not what do you want, it's what do we want for the
Yeah.
business. And so that's also been a trip to continue growing and continuing to ask myself, what do I want the business to look like? And so continuing to move forward with growing our client base and just controlled growth. That's what's coming for me and what's happening is controlled growth, not crazy big scaling, big launches. It's just I want to get better. I want every month to be a little bit better than the last. That's
Mhm.
what I want. And then your second question was advice for the listeners.
Yeah. Yeah.
My advice to the listeners would be I could not have survived the last 8 years of everything I've shared over this interview without a regular practice to train my nervous system because your
Hmm.
nervous system will get pounded when you're stressed. And then you won't be able to make sound decisions. You won't be able to have amicable breakups in business because you will need to have breakups in business. I have
Mhm.
had many from my actual business partner to clients to vendors. There will be relationships that you cannot continue with. And the difference there is when your nervous system is regulated and you're not acting from a place of fear and threat and anger is so different. The business that Margie is the CEO of now is called Brain Based Wellness. And I've been a client of theirs for 6 years. I use that site, it's a membership site, and I use their classes almost every single day. I never go more than a day without taking one of their classes. And it just gives you
Hmm.
tools to regulate your nervous system and to expand your capacity for these difficult experiences. And it quiets the anxiety and the fear so that you can access that level of consciousness, so that you can actually let God into your life. Because when you're dysregulated and stressed, you can't even think ahead 5 minutes because you're so focused on what's happening right now. So that's what I would recommend.
Wow. I didn't think you were going to bring that up, but I had a guest on a few weeks ago that was talking about the brain regulation and different therapies that you can use. And I hadn't heard of that particular one. What was that called again?
It's called Brain Based Wellness. I have an affiliate link if it's okay that I share. It's interviewconnections.com/brain based, and that'll just take you right to a 2 week free trial.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then we want to make sure that people can get into your world. So how can
Yeah.
people learn more about you and interview connections and what you can do for them? And maybe you can just do a
Yeah.
little pitch here.
Oh, yeah. So interviewconnections.com is my website. So that's my home base. That's where I would recommend you go. Every month, I host a podcast guesting masterclass. And as you've just heard in this
Mm.
interview, I run them very well.
Yeah.
But every month, it's an opportunity for free to learn about getting clients as a podcast guest. And so if you go to interviewconnections.com, you'll see the dates of the next masterclass is always right at the top of the website. So that's where you can go to connect with me and hopefully jump into one of my upcoming masterclasses.
And you'll learn a lot from her master classes. They're great. And even if you work with her, you're going to be in great hands. If you decide to do it on your own, you're going to learn an awful lot that you can do. And eventually you probably will come back to her because you just need it. You just need the
Yeah.
help. I endorse Interview Connections. Let's put it
Thank you
that way.
so much. Yeah. Thank you so much.
So, so it's been a pleasure having you on again. I thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. I always love the opportunity to share this story. So thank you.
Yeah, you're good. So remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyon and Jessica Rhodes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyon, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.